Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we wander back to the age of marble and myth, Athens, when gods still dropped by unannounced and pigeons hadn't yet learned to outnumber philosophers. The air smells of olive oil and warm stone, and somewhere above the sleeping city, the goddess Athena perches on the edge of her own temple, watching the mortals below, and thinking, as goddesses occasionally do, that perhaps the owls could use a civics lesson. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is, because I always imagine these stories traveling across time zones like soft little candles. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the middle of the ancient agora, sandals crunching over scattered pebbles that once carried the echo of thousands of arguments. It's late, the kind of late when the torches gutter and the street dogs finally stop caring about democracy. The Parthenon glows faintly above, each column gleaming like a frozen ripple of moonlight. Somewhere beyond the olive groves, an owl hoots, deep and steady, like a philosopher who's run out of students. Athena's presence feels near. She doesn't arrive in a thunderclap. No, she just appears, as if she'd been standing there the whole time, a shimmer in the corner of your eye. Her armor catches the moonlight, but her expression is weary, thoughtful. She's been watching mortals bicker for centuries and has concluded that if democracy is truly for everyone, perhaps everyone should include the city's official birds. You, she says, turning to you with that calm, terrifying kindness gods are famous for. You seem awake. You'll help me teach them. You nod, because arguing with a deity tends to go poorly, especially one holding a spear the size of a lamppost. She gestures toward the Acropolis, and you follow her up the marble steps, the wind teasing your cloak, carrying the distant scent of figs and sea salt. On the way, she muses aloud about civic virtue, taxation, and how most mortals seem allergic to quorum attendance. Mortals think democracy is just shouting, but it's really listening, isn't it? And who listens better than owls? It's hard to argue. The night is thick with their soft calls. They perch along the parapets and temple roofs, golden eyes glinting like little lanterns. Athena spreads her hand, and hundreds of them flutter down, forming a semicircle around her, a parliament of feathers, blinking with dignified confusion. She clears her throat, which is unnecessary but dramatic. Citizens of the night, you are wise by nature, but wisdom without process is just noise. A long silence. Then one owl hoots, another echoes it, and soon the hill hums like a living instrument. It's beautiful, until you realize none of them are waiting their turn to speak. You step forward timidly, raising your hand like a nervous schoolchild. Maybe we, should have some order of business? Athena nods approvingly. Yes, rules, the essence of democracy. She draws in the air with her spear point, etching a glowing circle that becomes a kind of magical chalkboard. On it she sketches 3 basic laws. Listen, vote, don't eat the smaller owls. The third one earns a collective shuffle of feathers and guilty hoots. Down below, the city sleeps unaware that their goddess is holding a midnight seminar for birds. The stars wheel lazily overhead. You realize this might be the world's first true experiment in cross-species government. Historians still argue whether this counts as the first recorded instance of avian suffrage, but it certainly deserves a footnote somewhere between myth and municipal law. One owl, larger than the rest, hops forward, a veteran, perhaps, with a scar across one eye and the kind of attitude that says he's seen too many sunsets. He gives a slow, thoughtful hoot. Athena translates. He asks what the agenda is. The agenda, she replies, is fairness. A rustle goes through the flock. You can tell they're skeptical. Fairness, after all, is a human obsession. Owls care about hunting grounds, mating rights, and whether someone's been hoarding too many field mice. Still, Athena seems confident. She gestures toward you again. Explain fairness to them. No pressure. You stammer something about equal opportunity, about how every owl should get a say in how the forest is managed. Athena listens, arms crossed, as the owls tilt their heads like professors evaluating a thesis. Then one smaller owl flaps up and hoots indignantly. Athena frowns. She says you're defining fairness from a human point of view. She'd prefer the term balanced hunting rotation. The goddess chuckles softly. See? Already better policymakers than most mortals. For a while, it almost works. You draw lines in the sand to represent territories. Athena explains that decisions must be made collectively. The owls try voting by pecking at pebbles, one pile for yes, one pile for no. Unfortunately, some of them eat the pebbles, confusing the results. Athena sighs, but doesn't give up. Democracy, she mutters, is 90% patience and 10% divine intervention. Below, the wind carries faint sounds of distant laughter from mortal taverns. You can almost hear echoes of future centuries, forums, parliaments, social media threads, all arguing just like this under their own flickering lights. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Ancient Athenians sometimes used ostraca, pottery shards, to cast votes for exile. You mention it to Athena, wondering if the owls might prefer that method. She actually likes it. Broken pots instead of ballots. Poetic. She waves her hand, and hundreds of tiny shards appear, each glowing faintly blue. Each of you gets one, she tells the owls. Vote wisely. What follows is pandemonium. Shards clattering, wings beating, Athena trying to mediate. It's democracy at its most honest, messy, hopeful, completely chaotic. You can't help but laugh quietly. You sure this is going to work? Athena gives you a small smile. You probably won't survive this, she says, half joking, but maybe democracy will. The moon hangs low now, brushing the marble with silver. Somewhere, a rooster crows prematurely, thinking it's dawn. The goddess looks up, eyes glinting. Tomorrow, she says, we'll convene again. The first owl assembly begins at dusk. She vanishes, leaving behind the faint scent of olive leaves and lightning. The owls scatter into the dark, murmuring like gossiping senators. You stand alone on the steps, the night suddenly too quiet. Somewhere deep inside you, a thought takes root. Maybe wisdom isn't something the gods give, but something that grows, feather by feather, in the dark. You start walking back to the sleeping city, past broken columns and whispering laurels. Each step feels softer than the last, as if the marble itself is thinking along with you. The air hums with the memory of Athena's voice and the promise of a meeting that might change the world, or at least make it slightly more organized. The torches sputter one by one, until only moonlight guides you home. Tomorrow, you'll help a goddess teach owls about democracy. Tonight, You try to remember how to explain fairness without sounding like a philosopher or a fool. And as you drift toward sleep, or maybe toward history, you hear a final, distant hoot. It sounds suspiciously like a vote of confidence.
When the sun finally surrenders behind the violet hills, the air cools and the stones breathe again. You climb back toward the Acropolis, still wondering whether last night was a dream or just democracy's strangest pilot project. The marble smells faintly of rain and bird droppings, both promising signs of divine activity. The owls are already there, perched in orderly chaos across the columns like fuzzy ornaments. Athena stands at the center, hands clasped behind her back, expression halfway between patience and regret. The breeze toys with the blue ribbon around her spear. "Welcome back," she says as you arrive, slightly out of breath. "I've called this the first assembly of avian citizens." She waits for applause. The owls blink. Somewhere one cough hoots politely. Athena continues, unbothered. "Tonight we establish procedure. Every democracy needs procedure, or it becomes theater. Although," she adds, glancing around at the feathery crowd, "I suppose we have both. You're assigned the role of herald of reason, which sounds grander than it is. Basically, you translate. Athena speaks in godly Greek. The owls respond in a series of hoots that range from mildly intrigued to existential dread. You stand in the middle, waving your arms like a mediator at a very loud yoga class. The first order of business, attendance. Athena insists on a quorum, but counting owls is like counting dreams. They keep moving when you look away. You finally settle on many as the official figure. Historians still argue whether this constitutes the earliest case of approximate representation. Athena taps her spear to the ground, sending a hum through the stone. "We begin." Instantly, the owls erupt in hoots, not angry, just enthusiastic. Everyone wants to speak first. You try to restore order by imitating the caw of a crow, which, as you discover, is the diplomatic equivalent of throwing olive oil on a bonfire. Athena sighs and conjures a golden staff glowing with moonlight. "Whoever holds this shall speak. The rest shall listen." It works, astonishingly. The first speaker is a young barn owl who introduces herself as Strigona, advocate for equal hunting grounds. She hoots passionately about how larger owls monopolize the best fields, leaving smaller species to scavenge near temples and theaters where mortals throw stones. Athena listens intently, nodding. "Equity," she whispers. "Even birds understand it." Then an enormous eagle owl, feathers puffed like a Senate robe, demands recognition. His voice is deep enough to rattle amphoras. He insists that hierarchy is natural, that not every wing is built for leadership. Democracy, he hoots, is for those who have time to argue instead of hunt. Athena raises an eyebrow. "Spoken like a future demagogue," she murmurs. You translate cautiously, trying to omit the divine sarcasm, but the owl seems to sense it. A few feathers ruffle. For a tense moment, it feels like war might break out between egalitarians and aristoles. Athena acts fast. She decrees a vote on whether future meetings will limit speaking time. Owls peck at pebbles again. This time, you've painted the yes pile blue with crushed lapis dust to avoid confusion or accidental snacking. When the count is done, democracy wins by the margin of 2 pebbles. Athena beams. "Progress," she declares. "We now have bureaucracy." You make the first official record on a wax tablet. Motion 1. Speaking time shall be limited to 1 hoot cycle per participant. It looks ridiculous, but oddly historic. As the meeting drifts on, Athens itself seems to lean closer. From below, faint lyre music wafts upward. Somewhere, a playwright rehearses a new comedy mocking the city's politicians. You wonder if someday he'll parody this too, a goddess and her parliament of owls. A quirky fact flutters through your memory. In actual Athens, citizens were sometimes paid a small fee to attend the assembly so they wouldn't skip it for farm work. You mention this to Athena. She frowns. Mortals require wages to discuss justice? You shrug. Attention spans are expensive. She considers this gravely. Perhaps the owls need incentive. She conjures a pile of shimmering seed offerings, pomegranate kernels, roasted locusts, tiny figs. The audience perks up instantly. Attendance rates skyrocket. See? You whisper. Basic income works. She gives you that unreadable divine look, the one halfway between admiration and smiting temptation. The debate resumes. New motions arise. Should daylight be shortened for better hunting? Should bats receive honorary citizenship? Should Athena herself be subject to term limits? That one nearly gets the entire assembly vaporized. Athena laughs, but it's the kind of laugh that makes thunder nervous. Bold, she says. I like boldness. But remember, immortals are less easily replaced. The owls hoot in nervous agreement. As night deepens, the atmosphere shifts. The moon slides higher, silvering every feather. The debate's slow, and a strange calm settles, the kind that happens when creatures, divine or mortal, glimpse the possibility that cooperation might actually work. One owl proposes forming committees. Another suggests codifying minutes. You realize they're inventing bureaucracy in real time. Future generations will curse this moment, but tonight it feels profound. Then, inevitably, it unravels. Two owls began arguing about whether perching spots should be rotated by seniority or merit. Within minutes, the entire assembly is a flurry of wings. You duck for cover behind a column as Athena rubs her temples. Democracy, she says softly, is like sculpting wind. You think you've shaped it, and then, she gestures toward the chaos, it remembers it's free. She raises her hand. Instantly silence. The owls freeze mid-hoot. The air crackles with divine authority. Enough for tonight, she says. Let them sleep on their decisions. Tomorrow we attempt voting reform. The owls disperse in elegant confusion, fluttering into the night. You stand beside Athena, staring at the marble floor now littered with feathers and crushed pebbles, the first debris of governance. A thought lingers. If democracy among mortals is fragile, among owls it's practically miraculous. Still, the spark is there. Tiny, absurd, indestructible. Athena looks skyward. Do you hear it? She asks. You listen. The wind rustles through olive branches, carrying faint echoes of hoots that sound suspiciously like debate continuing in the dark. Athena smiles. Good. They're still talking. That means it's working. You grin back. Or they're arguing about snacks. She tilts her head. That too. Somewhere below, dawn is already beginning to think about happening. The horizon blushes faintly pink, like a promise. You follow Athena down the steps again, both of you silent, both a little amazed that something so ridiculous might actually matter. And behind you, the Acropolis hums with quiet, bureaucratic dignity, a parliament of owls dreaming of a better night.
By the following evening, you're no longer surprised that you're part of a divine political experiment involving birds. You bring snacks this time, mainly dried figs and cautious optimism. The Acropolis feels different tonight. The torches burn steadier, as if the gods themselves want to see how this goes. Marble steps glitter faintly from spilled olive oil. Someone, probably Athena, has swept the area like a perfectionist preparing for an inspection. The owls gather again, their round eyes reflecting starlight like 100 small moons. There's an undercurrent of excitement in their soft wing shuffles, as though they know something important is about to happen. Athena appears beside you, expression determined, a clay tablet under one arm. "We refine the process tonight," she says. "Yesterday was chaos. Democracy must have structure, or it turns into theater, and I already have plenty of that in Dionysus temples." She lays the tablet on a flat rock, and you glimpse intricate symbols etched into the clay. Some divine geometry, some what looks suspiciously like doodled feathers. "Our challenge," she explains, "is simple. How do we vote without devouring the ballots?" You nod gravely. The eternal question. Athena smirks. "You mortals use pebbles, tokens, shards. I admire your faith in small, swallowable objects." She waves her hand, and an amphora materializes, tall and elegant, its sides painted with images of owls wearing togas. "We'll vote with pebbles still, but now they go in here." You demonstrate. Each owl will pick a colored pebble, white for yes, black for no, and drop it through the amphora's mouth. A clear, satisfying plink echoes inside. The first test motion is mundane. Should the assembly convene at dusk or midnight? The owls queue up like polite civil servants. You can't help but admire their discipline. For creatures. The following night, you arrive earlier than usual. The Acropolis glows softly under a crescent moon, and the city below sleeps, oblivious to the unprecedented political experiment unfolding above. You can feel the faint vibration of marble beneath your feet, like it's whispering, "History is happening, whether you're ready or not." Athena is already present, pacing slowly along the Parthenon's edge. Her armor catches the moonlight in a way that makes it seem alive, flickering with divine anticipation. She turns as you approach, a faint smile playing across her lips. "Tonight," she says, "we see how wisdom and instinct collide." The owls are assembled in neat, if slightly impatient, clusters. Some preen, others blink slowly, and a few practice flapping maneuvers that seem unrelated to governance, but highly entertaining nonetheless. Athena gestures to you. You'll moderate again, translate the subtleties of feathered debate into mortal comprehension. You swallow and nod, knowing that subtlety may be the only bridge between species whose intelligence runs both parallel and perpendicular to human thought. The first motion is immediately provocative. Should night hunting hours be strictly regulated? The younger owls rise, hooting eagerly about fairness, efficiency, and the right to claim the best trees. The older, larger ones argue instinct trumps regulation, feathers bristling like tiny garrisons defending centuries of tradition. Athena watches silently, her arms folded. "Notice the pattern," she whispers. "Even when feathers rule, philosophy sneaks in through the gaps." At that moment, a figure appears at the edge of the assembly, a human philosopher from the agora, drawn by the faint glow of magic or maybe sheer curiosity. He's uninvited, but undeterred. Socrates, or someone suspiciously like him, leans on a column, stroking his beard and muttering about the ethics of governance. You glance at Athena. She shrugs. Mortals never resist a debate, no matter the audience. The philosopher steps closer. "You may call it democracy," he says, addressing the owls directly, But without dialectic, it is mere chaos. He gestures dramatically, as if expecting applause. The owls blink. Then they hook. Some flap aggressively. One elder lands on his shoulder. Athena sighs softly. "He's underestimated them," she murmurs. "Feathers are surprisingly literal." A quirky tidbit crosses your mind. Some Athenian citizens once wore helmets with exaggerated crests during debates to appear more imposing. You whisper this to Athena, who laughs. "Perhaps our owls have natural advantages." Despite the initial confusion, the philosopher begins asking probing questions. What is justice? How do we balance the majority's will against the needs of the few? The owls respond with a mixture of hoots and wing gestures, occasionally colliding mid-air as if demonstrating the physical tension inherent in moral philosophy. You translate patiently. "They say that the strongest wings should not dictate flight paths. Equality is essential, even if it slows hunting." Athena nods approvingly. "Exactly. Democracy is not merely counting votes. It is navigating instinct, ego, and ethics." The assembly grows increasingly spirited. Feathers flutter like banners in a storm. Owls propose codifying principles, debating whether perching rights are more important than hunting access. Philosophers from below shout interpretations through the night air, providing a chorus of unsolicited wisdom. You can feel the tension between natural inclination and reason. It's dizzying. One particularly argumentative owl hoots repeatedly, landing atop a philosopher's shoulder in what can only be described as an emphatic objection. The human yelps, losing his scroll in a cloud of dust. Athena suppresses a laugh. "Remember the crocodile dung sunscreen?" she murmurs, one of those callbacks only you catch, and you grin. History, she implies, is messy, fragrant, and occasionally absurd. The debate continues for hours. Athena interjects when feathers dominate too heavily, offering gentle corrections in the language of moonlight and motion. She encourages reasoning over instinct, but never suppresses the owl's natural behaviors. After all, democracy is a negotiation, not a lecture. An owl suggests creating a council of philosophers, effectively inviting humans into the fold as advisors. Athena raises an eyebrow. "They are ambitious, and perhaps too clever by half." You jot notes, noting patterns. Younger owls are idealistic, older ones pragmatic, and humans, when tolerated, bring theories but rarely practice. Historians still argue whether this assembly influenced later depictions of citizen participation or was merely a mythological exaggeration. At one point, you step back to observe. The owl's wings beat in chaotic rhythms, their eyes gleam with curiosity and frustration. Philosophers gesticulate wildly. Athena moves among them like a calm conductor guiding a symphony of discord. You realize that democracy, even among humans, is rarely neat. Watching it unfold in feathers is almost poetic. A particularly large eagle owl proposes alternating nights between hunting freedom and civic assembly, a literal rotation of responsibilities. Athena nods, impressed. Efficiency and instinct, surprisingly compatible. The night deepens, punctuated by intermittent hoots and philosophical exclamations. You notice that even amidst confusion, certain truths emerge. Consensus is fragile, compromise is necessary, and humor is essential. Otherwise, no one survives the intensity of governance. You laugh quietly as an owl attempts to mimic a philosopher's sigh. Athena smiles, shaking her head. They're learning more than anyone suspects. Somewhere in the distance, the city's sleeping humans remain unaware that above them, a coalition of feathers and philosophy debates justice, representation, and the merits of term limits. You can feel the weight of history pressing gently, like a wing across your shoulder. At the end of the session, the assembly reaches tentative agreements on three motions: perching rotation, hunting hours, and ceremonial hoot order. It's imperfect but groundbreaking, a union of instinct and reason, chaos and structure. Athena turns to you, exhausted but satisfied. Feathers versus philosophy, she says, is a balance every democracy must strike. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but tonight it worked. You nod, watching the owls settle in clusters along the marble columns, their bodies low, eyes bright, wings occasionally flicking in silent discussion. Somewhere in the distance, a philosopher mutters about hubris, missing entirely that the owls, more than humans, understand humility. The moon arcs higher, silvering the ancient stones. The night carries the faint murmur of learning, debate, and collaboration. Somewhere deep in your chest, you feel it too, the improbable rhythm of order emerging from instinct, chaos, and quiet dedication. And as you step down from the Acropolis with Athena at your side, you realize the experiment has grown beyond instruction. It has become a living meditation on wisdom, governance, and the beautiful absurdity of democracy itself.
The following morning, Athens hums with a sleepy energy. Merchants sweep their stalls, fishermen carry crates of silvered fish, and somewhere near the agora, a playwright mutters lines under his breath, inspired by what he insists must have been a divine fever dream. You walk among the streets, feeling the faint buzz of the city beneath your feet, knowing full well that word of Athena's nocturnal assembly has begun to drift like a feather caught in a lazy breeze. Rumor spreads faster than roasted olives. By mid-morning, whispers of Athena teaches owls politics reach taverns, baths, and even the city's less reputable courtyards. Olive merchants debate whether the owls deserve civic participation, and one particularly talkative goat, yes, a goat, seems oddly convinced it should have voting rights. You shake your head. Some things never change. Athena waits at the Acropolis, perched gracefully, her gaze sweeping over the city with a faintly amused glint. "They're talking," she says softly. "That's half the battle." Indeed, the owls themselves are still assembling. They land with a faint rustle of feathers, blinking golden eyes in the morning light. Some strut across the marble like proud senators, while others perch in clusters, whispering, or as close to whispering as owls can manage, about hunting schedules and civic duties. A few, having tasted bureaucratic power, appear insufferably self-important. The first motion of the day is mundane but politically explosive. Should nocturnal assemblies be public or secret? Immediately feathers ruffle. Some owls argue for transparency. Citizens have a right to observe, they insist. Others hoot that secrecy ensures honesty, or at least prevents small rodents from being bribed into silence. Athena watches quietly, enjoying the spectacle. You translate, feeling like a cross between a UN interpreter and an exhausted elementary school teacher. One owl, noticeably larger and more theatrical than the rest, hoots with indignation. "Transparency is overrated. We may be nocturnal, but we are still proud creatures." Athena smirks. "Pride," she whispers to you, "is the spice of democracy." Meanwhile, the city below begins to notice the unusual spectacle. Children peek from windows, and philosophers tiptoe closer, eager to glimpse this unprecedented intersection of myth, politics, and feathers. One bard immediately begins composing a song about owls in the agora, with exaggerated wing flaps and dramatic hoots. You can already tell this will be a favorite at symposiums for decades. Then comes the first real mishap. A dispute arises over seed distribution, who receives the ceremonial figs for service to the assembly, and suddenly two owl factions engage in a flurry of feathers and minor shrieks.
Athena raises her hand, sending a quiet pulse through the air, but the commotion is so charmingly absurd you can't help but laugh. The larger owl, responsible for the dispute, lands on a column and flaps with indignation. "We demand equality in all provisions," it hoots, eyes gleaming. "Equality," you translate, "but perhaps not at the expense of diplomacy." Athena watches carefully. This is a lesson all leaders must learn. Fairness often clashes with instinct. A quirky historical echo drifts into your mind. Ancient Athenians occasionally ostracized citizens with pottery shards when public opinion demanded it. You mention it quietly. Athena chuckles. "Perhaps we need a version for feathers. Tiny ostraka. Not edible, though." The idea is immediately dismissed when one owl attempts to nibble a shard. Democracy, it seems, is delicious, or at least confusingly so. As the assembly proceeds, you notice that gossip isn't just among humans. Owls whisper to one another about who has influence, who seems too aggressive, and who might be secretly planning a coup of the perch. Athena notes it with a knowing look. Even in feathers, politics breeds rumor. The city absorbs the spectacle in its own way. A baker, hearing the morning hoots, swears the owls are demanding free bread. A philosopher scribbles furiously, convinced he's witnessing divine proof of civic duty. And somewhere, the goat continues to debate its hypothetical role in government. Despite the chaos, some progress emerges. They establish protocols for voting, for rotating speaking turns, and for dispute resolution, though the latter usually ends with an impromptu flight demonstration that settles arguments by sheer aerial skill. You record everything. Future historians will marvel at the depth of feathery civic engagement. By mid-afternoon, the city seems oddly energized. News of owl governments inspires casual debates among merchants, tavern patrons, and philosophers alike. They speculate on morality, justice, and whether Athena has finally taken a more hands-on approach to civic education. Athena turns to you, serene and amused. "You see," she says, "gossip spreads democracy as efficiently as reason does, sometimes more." Indeed, by sunset, even the playwright is performing excerpts of the night's debates for an audience of intrigued Athenians. One comedic sketch depicts an owl filibustering with remarkable panache. You can't help but laugh, realizing the absurdity is part of the lesson. Democracy is messy, theatrical, and contagious. The final motion of the day addresses oversight. Should mortal scholars be allowed advisory roles? A chorus of hoots erupts, some approving, some suspicious. Athena translates with patience, occasionally muttering, "They're learning skepticism already. Remarkable." As night falls, the owls perch quietly, feathers ruffled but content. Athens itself seems to exhale, the wind carrying the faint echo of distant hoots across tiled roofs. You realize that gossip, debate, and minor chaos have not diminished governance, they have enriched it, embedding civic engagement into the city's very rhythm. Athena turns, casting her gaze over both city and flock. "Tomorrow," she says softly, "we face corruption, ambition, and perhaps a little divine mischief." You nod, exhausted but exhilarated, watching as the owls settle, some preening, some nodding as in solemn reflection. The city hums beneath you, the memory of the assembly already beginning to blur into legend, rumor, and myth. For now, Athens sleeps with one eye open and one ear attentive, listening for the faint but persistent hum of feathers arguing about fairness, and you can't help but smile.